Small Harry and Big Alf lived in a caravan on a lay-by on the A25. Every time a policeman had come by to ask them to move on, Big Alf had laughed his big deep laugh and put his arm around the policeman's shoulder and told him not to worry, as they were just changing a wheel. So they'd stayed for 25 years in the same lay-by, enjoying a life of constant argument. The trouble with Big Alf was that he told really enormous lies. Most of them Small Harry didn't bother about, but sometimes they made him angry. A typical conversation would go like this. Big Alf, I know a way to send a message to Mars and back, using only 3 bits of string and an empty biscuit packet. Small Harry, no you don't. Big Alf, I do. Small Harry, you don't. Big Alf, I do. And so on. Among other things, Big Alf claimed to have invented the guided missile, the bicycle pedal, the sandblasting process for cleaning public buildings, and aeroplane wings. Then one day, Big Alf died. Small Harry came home with the shopping and found Big Alf not in his usual chair, but right across the kitchen table, face downwards, and not a breath left in him. The doctor said that it was old age, weight, bad food, too much beer, and possibly an arrow in the chest, though he couldn't be too sure about that. And they came and took him away very quickly, and Small Harry was very upset. For although he and Big Alf had argued all the time, and Big Alf told really enormous lies, he had been his only friend. With Big Alf gone, the police were no longer so friendly. Small Harry tried to charm them by telling them jokes and putting his arm round their shoulders, but he wasn't really tall enough, and he had to stretch up to get his arm around them, and most policemen didn't like him doing that. Then he discovered that Big Alf had never really owned the caravan, as he said he had, and that he never paid any rent, as he said he had, and that he owed thousands of pounds to someone in Leeds, although he never said he had. Small Harry had no money, and so the police came round and told him he would have to leave the caravan and go and live elsewhere. Then a man in a grey suit and a rover arrived and started taking away things out of the caravan. He said he was a very important accountant and he'd looked after Big Alf's money for all these years and Big Alf had never paid him a penny for it. But he never had any money to look after, said Small Harry. He said he was always broke. Then he was a liar, said the man as he took the television and the toaster and the clothes horse and put them in the back of his car. Small Harry wasn't one for feeling sorry for himself, but he did on that night. He couldn't sleep for thinking how much he'd loved Big Alf and how much he missed him now. When the first light of dawn crept in through the uncurtained windows of the empty caravan, Small Harry was awakened from a light doze by a sharp knock at the door. "Come on, I know you're in there," shouted a voice. Small Harry froze. This must be the police come to throw him out. All right. Small Harry took a last look around, grabbed a packet of biscuits and pulled the door open. A torch glared in his face. "You Small Harry," said a voice behind the torchlight. "Yes?" "You Big Alf's friend?" "Yes." There was a short pause. Small Harry was frightened because he couldn't see anything. Then the torch was lowered, and Small Harry could see it wasn't a policeman at all, but a man with a tweed suit, spectacles, and a thick black moustache. "I've been looking everywhere for you, but he gave me the wrong address." "He? Big Alf, your friend, you know?" "Well, he was always making things up," said Small Harry sadly. "I should say so," said the man, a little crossly, and fiddled with some papers. Small Harry didn't like his tone of voice. "What do you know about him?" he retorted. "He's left you his house in his will." "He didn't have a house. He only had a caravan, and that wasn't his." "Well, all I can say is he's been lying to you. He's got a great big house in Scotland, as big as 40 caravans. He bought it with his fortune." "His fortune?" Small Harry suddenly caught on. It wasn't from inventing aeroplane wings, or the bicycle pedal, or guided missiles, or a sandblasting process for cleaning public buildings by any chance? "No," said the man, who was getting cold and impatient. "I don't know what you're talking about. It was the toothache pill." "What toothache pill?" "The Big A toothache pill. He sold it all over the world." Small Harry hadn't heard this one before. "Don't know much about your friend, do you?" "I know more than you," said Small Harry, and he felt his anger rising and his glasses steaming up, and he wanted to hit this man who was playing tricks with him. "Well, I really don't have any more time to waste. Here are the details." And he pushed a large brown envelope into Small Harry's shaking hand and turned and got back into his car and drove away very fast back to London. Small Harry stood at the door of the caravan. Toothache pill. toothache pill. And he started to laugh, and he couldn't stop. And his sides shook, and he leaned against the caravan door, and the caravan shook, and he staggered into the lay-by and was nearly run over. He was laughing so much. To think that man came all this way to tell me Big Alf invented a toothache pill. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And he began to cry with laughter. And then he found he was crying real tears because he wished Big Alf was still alive, because he told stories like that better than anybody. And he put the brown envelope in his pocket and forgot about it. Small Harry walked to the top of the hill and took one last look at the caravan he'd lived in for 25 years, and then turned his back on it and hurried on. He got a job as a waiter in a nearby town, but one day his bow tie fell off and dropped in the Lord Mayor's soup, and he was asked to leave. He got a job as a painter, but when it came to his lunch break, he sat on the seat he'd just finished painting and was stuck to it for 3 hours, and he was asked to leave. He got a job as a window cleaner, but the first window he cleaned was wide open, and he flung a bucket of water over a lady who was dressing, and he was asked to leave. After 3 months, he had no job and no money. He went to sleep under a railway arch, with nothing but his old grey-green coat to wrap around him, and a bitter cold wind turning his fingers blue. How he wished he could be with Big Alf again. Big Alf would make him laugh and slap him on the back and make up some wonderful story that would cheer them both up. But tonight, Smaller Harry had no one for company except the trains that rumbled overhead and the wind that blew paper bags across his face. Then a torch shone down at him and a voice said, "Come on, get up. You can't sleep here, you know." It was a policeman. He asked Small Harry to turn out his pockets. Small Harry showed the policeman his 2 old pencils, 2 rotten apples, and a half bottle of hair restorer. "Anything else?" said the policeman. "No," said Small Harry. But the policeman didn't believe him, and he stood him up against the wall and ran his hands up and down Small Harry's body, and he stopped and felt and looked and pulled out a battered brown envelope. "What's this?" said the policeman. I don't know," said Small Harry, which was true because he'd forgotten all about it and had never bothered to look inside. The policeman opened the envelope and pulled out a photograph. He looked hard at it. Then he held it out to Small Harry. "Well, what's this picture then?" Small Harry looked, and in front of him was a photograph of a huge house, as big as 40 caravans, with 30 chimneys, 4 front doors, and an enormous garden and a flag flying from the battlements. "Well," said the policeman. Small Harry grinned and said, "That's my house." "Ha ha," said the policeman. "That's a good one." "It is my house," said Small Harry. "It's in Scotland. My friend left it to me in his will." "Oh, yes, I suppose he was an oil millionaire, was he, your friend?" "No, he invented the Big A toothache pill." "I don't believe you," said the policeman. Small Harry felt very good. He'd been waiting for someone to say that to him all his life. Big Alf would be proud of him now. He pulled himself up to his full height and stared hard at the policeman's chest. "That's my house, and my friend bought it with a fortune he made from a toothache pill. Now, if you don't mind, I'll be going. The servants will be wondering when I will be coming in for dinner." And he picked up his 2 rotten apples, and his 2 old pencils, and his half bottle of hair restorer, and he took the photograph and pulled his coat around him and turned on his heel and walked away from the railway bridge. He hadn't gone many yards when he heard someone following him. He stopped, and as he did so, somebody else stopped. But when he looked along the street, he couldn't see anybody. He walked on again, and again he heard the footsteps of someone behind him. He started to run. The footsteps started to run. He raced up a little alleyway off the main street and stopped and listened. His heart was beating fast, and he realized he'd been holding his breath for almost a minute. When he couldn't hear anyone coming, he let his breath out all in a rush, and he turned and ran up to the top of the alley, glad he was safe, when a big hairy hand shot out of the shadows and pushed him hard against the wall. Small Harry shook with terror. Who's that? He could see only a dim shape because the shadow from the light above was so dark. "That's him," said the voice. From out of the shadows came 3 of the nastiest men he could ever wish to see in his life. They all had scars across their faces and an ugly expression. One of them, who smelt of onions, leered close into Small Harry's face. "All right,"
Tell us, and you won't get hurt.
I'll tell you anything, said Small Harry, who was nothing if not a coward.
Right.
The onion-smelling man paused and uncrossed his eyes. Then he stared hard at Small Harry.
Tell us the secret of the Big A toothache pill.
Small Harry suddenly wanted to laugh, but he looked at the scarred and evil face and realized they were serious. I don't know anything about the Big A toothache pill, honestly. Fear tightened Small Harry's stomach again.
Come on,
said the man, his face inches from Small Harry.
You live with Big Alf in the caravan. He told you everything.
No, he didn't at all, honestly. At this, the man flew into a rage, and he took Small Harry's 2 favourite pencils out of his pocket and snapped them in half and threw them away. And he trod on the apples, and he was about to empty the hair restorer onto the ground when Small Harry suddenly felt Big Alf beside him again, and Big Alf's hand on his shoulder, and Big Alf's voice, as if from very close, saying,
Tell them anything, Small Harry. Anything.
And Harry shouted, I'll tell you anything. And the man smiled and leaned back and said to his friends,
There, I told you he was chicken. I knew he was yellow from the moment I saw him.
And they all sneered at Small Harry, and the leader grabbed him by the greasy lapels of his grey-green coat and said,
Right, let's hear it then. What was the secret of Big Alf's toothache pill?
And Small Harry, who had never lied in his life until he was stopped by the policeman under the railway bridge, said, I'll tell you. It's 3 drops of spring water, 4 pieces of charcoal, 2 bits of brown bread, and an ounce of saltpetre.
And?
Growled the man, pushing his face closer to the top of Small Harry's nose. And a ½ pound of ground-up mackerel eggs, he blurted out. And the men grinned with triumph and pushed Small Harry back against the wall and laughed and patted each other on the back and threw him 25 pence and ran away down the dark alleyway, leaving him alone and bruised against the wall. And Small Harry reached in his pocket and took out the picture of the huge house in Scotland. And he looked towards the fast-disappearing gang and back to the picture, and he began to laugh. And he laughed, and he thought he heard someone else laughing too. And he was sure it was Big Alf. And he knew Big Alf would have loved to hear the terrific story he'd just told. And Small Harry turned the photograph over, and on the other side it said, How to get to Killiecrankie House. Train to Scotland from Waterloo. Change at Edinburgh for Macnockey Halt. Asked for Mrs. Stewart at the railway station, who will be waiting with a motor car to take you to Killiecrankie House. Small Harry managed to sell his half bottle of hair restorer to the local museum by telling the man it once belonged to Charles I, who didn't have time to finish it before they cut his head off. And with the £20 he got from that, he decided to go to Scotland. And although the train didn't go from Waterloo, and although you didn't change at Edinburgh for Macnockey Halt, and although there was no Mrs. Stewart at the railway station, there was a man with a motorcycle sidecar. And although it wasn't called Killiecrankie, there was a house in the Highlands, as big as 40 caravans, with 100 rooms and 30 chimneys and 4 front doors and an enormous garden and a flag flying from the battlements. And the flag had written on it, Welcome home, Small Harry. And a butler came out and opened the door of the motorcycle sidecar and led Small Harry up the 30 steps to a huge wooden front door, and 2 servants said, Your dinner's ready, sir. And Small Harry went into the house, and he heard the biggest laugh he'd ever heard in his life. And there was Big Alf in an armchair. And Big Alf said, I fooled you again, eh? And Small Harry was very cross and very happy with his friend for playing such a trick. And they both lived happily ever after in the middle of the Highlands. Well, at least Big Alf said it was the Highlands. Goodbye.